Bob Porter. I don't think Bob really needs too much of an introduction. But, you know, this fellow, it's interesting quite often when I'm asked to introduce a speaker, I'll try to sort of find a little dirt or something really humorous or, you know, something that tweaks people. Do you know what? I couldn't find a thing. So I'm a failure at this particular introduction. I found out that he is regarded by all as a marvelous gentleman, and more importantly than that, a very fine rancher. So I'm sorry, that's all the dirt I could break up, Bob. A little bit of biography. Yes, Bob is married, and he has his lovely wife this evening here with him, Donna Lee. How long have you been married, Donna Lee? Okay, Donna says a long time. We'll leave it at that.
57 years.
57 years. Wow. Now, let's. And when you see them together, they're still a very young couple. They have 2 sons and 1 daughter. Their sons are Lee and Rick. They have a daughter, Marnie. They have 7 grandchildren and 2 great-grandchildren. And we don't have to mention, I don't know if Bob will mention a couple of his grandkids who unfortunately have left the ranch and gone into the entertainment business. But we'll see what he says about them. Bob is a past president of a number of different organizations. He's a past president of the Kinsman Club of Medicine Hat, the Medicine Hat Shrine Club, the Medicine Hat Exhibition and Stampede Company, the Cypress Club, the Chinook Club, and the Cypress Progressive Conservative Association. He has served on the board of directors, or is probably currently serving on some of these, I'm not sure which is which, but he certainly has given to other organizations and has served on the board of directors with the Western Stock Growers Association, the Alberta Cattle Commission, the Alberta Grazing Lease Association, the Alberta Press Council, and the Medicine Hat Community Foundation. He's also delved into politics very successfully for 2 terms, in 1984, and again was re-elected in 1988. He has been the recipient of the Queen's Jubilee Medal through the County of Cypress, has been bestowed an honorary applied degree from Medicine Hat College, and in 2008 in Calgary, the Calgary Stampede named him Rangeman of the Year. Bob, with something like that, we could probably go a little further, but you know what? Let's get into the story. Please welcome Bob.
Well, thank you very much, Alan. I've learned one thing being associated with this organization. If you're ever walking down the street minding your own business and you see Alan Jensen, get the hell out of the way. Minding my own business, and he asked me about this. I've told other groups before that I'm well past the age I should be doing this. I'm past my best of prime. If I was in your fridge, you wouldn't keep me any longer. However, having got into this situation, I did require some help. And I asked my daughter if she would help me a bit. And so she said, well, gather whatever you think you need. And I've got a few pictures and a few things on my phone and some old books and quite a variety of things. And she said, well, just give them to me. And she put them all together and brought them back. And I said, where are they? Because I'd given her a stack about this high. Well, she said, they're all on my laptop. Well, I didn't know whether I was going to be able to work that or not. And she said, Dad, you can't multitask. I said, I sure can. I was in the bathtub last night reading the paper, listening to Bob Ridley broadcast the hockey game. So anyway, she put all this stuff together, and I have no idea how it's going to work. The laptop is over in that corner. The screen is up there. I'm over here, and you're out there. I hope there's somebody up there helping. Anyway, I was asked to talk to you a bit about Buffalo and maybe a bit of background that we have. She says if I work this thing like this, something should happen on that screen. So we'll try it. Just another pretty face to start out with. We have been raising buffalo for the past 20 or more years. It started out, I guess, as a bit of a hobby for an old guy that came back from Ottawa. My kids are pretty well running the place. It's not our main business. We run commercial Angus. We have the feedlot business. We buy and feed cattle. And my sons seem to be like everybody else in agriculture. They have to diversify. You have to do other things to maintain an agricultural operation these days. So they're certainly doing that. This ranch that we are on, we've been involved, our family's been involved, as you can see on the gate, since 1883. This is where the last 5 generations of my family were raised, grew up there. It's southeast of Urban. You can see the Cypress Hills in the background. It was selected, like most old ranches were, because of the shelter that was available for livestock. And if you look around, most of the old ranches are in locations where there's a bit of water and shelter for winter conditions such as we've had. These are the people who operate it, my sons, Lee and Rick. It's a bit like the Dalton gang sometimes. They've operated. We haven't had full-time help since they were in high school. We get the odd person in occasionally, but they have run everything for the last, since they were teenagers. That's taken a while ago. It's my daughter Marnie is in there riding. She rides a couple of kids all over town, I think. They take most lessons that God ever created. Music and sports and one thing and another. We don't use horses much anymore. Buffalo don't like horses very much. I guess they have some bad memories of them years ago. And I'm getting too old, and the kids just jump on a dirt bike or something when they move cattle, so things have changed that way. But I did ride one time. That's an old picture. And I was born right in the depths of the Depression, right in the 30s. My dad was selling calves at $5 a head, 2-year-old steers at 2.5 cents a pound. It was tough going. We lived out there. I was the only one in the family. I assumed at the time they couldn't afford another mouth to feed. So when I arrived, we lived there. Only my closest neighbors were 7 miles away, and those were my 2 closest friends. The horse's name was Mickey, the dog was Scotty, and we became almost inseparable. We traveled around a lot, did all the kinds of things kids do, from snaring gophers to picking berries to getting lost. That's why the dog was there. That's the only babysitter I had till I went to school, grade 1. Mom had a thing thing rigged up. I think Dad got it somewhere. It was one of those horns from a Model T, and I guess he had a battery and a button in the house. It was the only convenience Mom had. We didn't have running water, and we didn't have electricity, and a lot of other things. So when she thought I was gone too long, she would blow that horn, and you could hear it all over. And I could hear it, but I tried not to pay attention to it, but the dog could hear it a lot better, I guess. So the dog took off, he ran home, and the horse thought if the dog's going, I better go. And if I was on the horse, I had a fast ride, and if I wasn't, I had a long walk home. I used to, Mom would send me out to take lunch out to Dad, sometimes working in the field, and quite often the lunch got there, sometimes it didn't. My excuse always was that Scotty got kind of hungry, and we ate the lunch on the way in. That was my life until I started school in Medicine Hat. But I used to ride around the ranch and I'd see different things, and this is something I didn't know what it was, and one day I was riding with my dad and he said, "You know what that is?" And I said, "No, but I use it to get on that horse when I can't, I wasn't big enough at first." He said, "That's a buffalo rubstone." I said, "That's when the buffalo are here, and you can see the indentation around that stone where they walked around and rubbed on it." And then I started looking around, and right on the hills above that, there were some teepee rings, and I used to find the odd arrowhead, and I think there's a little stone somewhere. It was a firestone that they'd used to start fires with. Mom was a painter, and she always said, if you see something interesting that's out there, you find it and bring it home. I'd like to paint it. And I used to find little flowers and the odd-shaped root and different things. And a few years when the creeks were running and there was some erosion, I would find these. Those were buffalo skeletons I found. And Mom was painted quite a bit. She used to paint in later years with Don McLean. And I remember she put these on the dining room table and did that portrait in oil of those buffalo skulls. The buffalo have a long history, much longer than anybody else in North America. They came here after the Ice Age, I guess. They came and there was a land bridge from Asia to North America. They crossed along with some of those first people that came here. Some of the Aboriginals arrived. I think the woolly mammoth and saber-toothed tiger and a few other animals came. But the buffalo were the ones that were able to adapt to the changing climate. And you can see what an area they covered, pretty well all of North America. The green is where the wood bison were. Bison, I guess, is the proper name. There's various adaptations of how buffalo came, but most people think the French settlers used the word boeuf or cow, and boeuf got changed to buffalo, and I guess that's there. We use it pretty well all the time in Canada. The Americans use bison more than we do because they get some buffalo shipped in, water buffalo from Asia, and they don't want to get it confused with that. So you can see the area that they covered, right from Alaska, Texas, into Mexico, over almost to the East Coast. Pretty obvious, even they separated from Quebec. I guess there's no way of estimating how many there could have been. You hear estimations somewhere between 60 and 100 million buffalo at one time, mostly on the Great Plains of North America. There were a lot of them. They migrated back and forth, and that went on for 10,000 years. They had it pretty much their own way. The native people, the amounts that they would consume wouldn't make much of a dent in the population. You'll recognize this, people from the Historical Society. That's smashed in buffalo. Yeah, the jump that's there, the interpretive center is just the size the only way. Those things are pretty hard to shoot, I would think, with a bow and arrow, although I've had a hunter try it one time. The skull behind me is one that I had shot at one time with a lot of difficulty. He and I had a misunderstanding. He jumped 3 Texas gates and would be walking up the Trans-Canada Highway, and I got a call from the RCMP saying, "That'd be your buffalo." Well, I knew it was. So the 3rd time he did it, we came to an agreement that his head would look better in the fireplace than out on the highway. This is just a depiction of how they got this buffalo over that smashed-in head buffalo jump. I know in trying to herd and chase buffalo that you couldn't chase a few over. They're pretty smart animals, and they get to the edge and they would turn back. The trick was to have enough of the herd that you were trying to get there, that the herd at the back would push these front ones over the embankment. Well, that was used for quite a while, and when they did the excavations and geologists started looking into it, the first evidence that that was used as a jump, and the Indians butchered them there, was 5,700 years ago. You know, we think of ourselves as a relatively new country. 5,700 years ago, that's 500 years before the first pyramid was built. That's before Stonehenge. So there were things that were happening here, the people that were living here and had to make a living, and that was their Walmart on wheels, I guess. They used every part of that animal, making all their food, their clothing, their shelter, all their tools, weapons. They used everything, and it was the one thing that they were able to maintain to keep their living. And as long as those buffalo were around, they were able to survive pretty well. And how they would do it, you can imagine some of these winter days we've had, trying to keep warm. And as they say, there's quite a few teepee rings where they would make their tents, and they would put the rocks around the bottom to hold the tents down. The buffalo didn't have a lot of predators. Probably, wolf would be probably one of the main ones, I guess. Bears to a lesser degree. Although I did have a fellow I sold, the game warden, right at the gate as you go in the water, and I sold him 15 heifers and 2 bulls one time. And you sell bulls, you try what people have, and you try to get them of different ages or sizes, or they'll fight if they're too evenly matched. And the smaller one, I'm assuming, must have bedded down a little further away from the heifers and the big bull. And apparently a grizzly bear must have come up on him when he was sleeping, or was laying down anyway, and got him by the neck. And that's the only recent occasion I've heard that where a bear has killed and it wasn't a full-grown buffalo. It was probably 1,700 pounds. It was a 2-year-old breeding bull. The wolves would get the stragglers, something that was injured, the calves. But I think they would have quite a time getting very many of them. I don't think anything's going to happen there. But, as long as they stayed in a bunch, and that's when they started running, and that's what the wolf packs would do, would try to get them to run, and then the weaker of the calves or something would start falling back. That's where they would get them. That was the biggest danger that they had. We've had that happen on a couple of occasions with a few that they're very sure-footed. They go out onto ice, and you get enough weight on it. Ice, it breaks, and then they go. There's a place on the Missouri River just out of Great Falls, Montana, and I've never seen it when the water is low. They said that this looks like a gravel bar of bones right across that river. And when they were migrating into the, coming north, they would cross that river. And as they broke through the ice, the other hundreds of thousands of buffalo would just keep coming. And they'd walk right over the bodies of the ones that were in the river. So that was, they can swim. They're good swimmers. I've seen them swim the odd time on a dugout or dam that we have, but I've got friends up in the East River country, and they have to keep it fenced up there because they'll swim right across. This was probably the biggest predator that they had. The train didn't arrive here until 1883 in Medicine Hat and in Western Canada. But it did start out earlier in the United States. They started building railroads in the 1830s and 40s from the East Coast going west. Probably all of you have seen movies and pictures of the railways being built. It's a depiction of what it may have looked like. There were thousands of buffalo out there. You've heard of Buffalo Bill Cody. He got his name as a result of being a hunter for the railroads, getting buffalo to feed the construction crews. He personally killed 4,200 buffalo. But as the railway got out there and was able to haul freight west, they obviously were able to haul freight the other way. And there was a market opened up that was almost like the days of the gold rush. Those are hides, buffalo hides. There were 10,000 or more hunters out on those plains. They were killing 5,000 to 6,000 buffalo a day, just taking the skins, leaving the carcasses to rot when they were. They were made into a variety of things, everything you would make with leather, but at that time a lot of factories used the leather for belting. Buffalo leather was a lot stronger than beef leather. A pair of buffalo gloves or boots will last a lot longer than cowhide. So they hauled them back, and the herds were really going down. The herds were diminishing, and at one time the Texas legislature tried to bring in a law that would curtail some of the hunting. And General Sheridan, who was in the cavalry at the time, passed that bill. It didn't go through. He said, we cannot solve the Indian problem as long as the buffalo are out there. So they kept killing them, and the cavalry did a lot of the killing too. So it's hard to imagine that that's what results of some of those. That's just one area. There were piles like that right across the prairies. You can imagine how many skulls like this one behind me would take to make a pile that size. They were shipped east, used for fertilizer. There was some process they used it in processing sugar. There was other things, but I guess mainly fertilizer. This is somewhere out here in east of here. There was a lot, almost every siding along the railway, because when the homesteaders came in and they found the homestead claim, one of the first things besides picking rocks, you picked the buffalo skulls off it. Took it to the nearest railway siding. I think Walsh and Irvin, I know Maple Creek had some. Regina, the city of Regina was named Pile of Bones at one time. Most of you in this room will recognize this. The city of Medicine Hat, a tent town in 1883. 1883 is my grandfather and his two brothers, Bob, Dick, and Jim. Porter arrived. Their grandfather had left Ireland in the 1830s. I can never figure that out. Why you would leave a country when it rained all the time and there was green grass But anyway, they came, they lived in Upper Canada for the next generation. And then as soon as there was an opportunity to come west, the three Porter brothers did it, and they came out that year. That's the temporary bridge they built to get across the river. That was the longest stretch of construction the CPR had, and here they went from 12 miles east of Maple Creek to the other side of Banff. And I guess it was fairly easy going, but just imagine building that much with the equipment that they had, mostly horses and Fresnos, that type of thing. I put that picture in 84. My great-grandfather, Sam Porter, came out. He was the father of those 3 boys and 5 daughters. The 5 daughters, the oldest one, Ellen, was married. Her husband's name was William Hawk. One married a Rutherford. The youngest one married Bert Hargrave's uncle. And Jack Hargrave was a veterinarian, and he was in charge of all of the veterinary services for the Northwest Territories. Days when you've probably seen the pictures of dipping baths. It was mange, and people had to run the cattle through those. The Porters got jobs working on that railway bridge. There was no welders, of course, in those days, so the bridge is either bolted or riveted together. And they had a job of throwing red hot rivets up to the guys who were working on it, and caught them in little cups, put them through the holes. The holes were pre-drilled, and riveting that steel on the bridge. Their father, Sam, got a contract to haul some of the sand and gravel for those pilings on the bridge. If you look right back from the bridge down towards the station, that's what you would have seen. That is the hand of the share of slaughtered buffalo in the area. It started to grow slightly, tent town. When they first got here, there were 2 of the only buildings that were here. One was to register land titles, the other was to brands for all of the Northwest Territories. That's everywhere up here, right from the mountains to Saskatchewan, or registered here in Medicine Hat. That's a bit later brand book. Everything registered here until 1905 when we became a province, and then Saskatchewan went on their own and started registering the brands there. That's just a close-up of the brand, and you can see we have several, both RP, right and left ribs. We have an RP of the hip Brantford for horses. That heart and arrow. The one we still have, but I haven't used it for a long time, is that reverse R on horses. We've kept those brands. I get into trouble all the time. The boys take cattle in to sell them. The cattle are listed now under RP Ranching Company. The brand is in my name, and the brand inspectors get all twisted up every time they get in there. And they think I'm rustling or what's going on. The reason that a lot of the early brand books, when you looked at them, 80% of the brands were on the left side, left ribs or left hip. And when they worked the open range, as depicted in a Russell picture, you see in the background right here, given a choice, cattle will move in a counterclockwise fashion, which exposes the left side. And those guys there are going in, they're looking for the brand on the cow, pulling the calf out, and that's the brand they'll put on. So that's the way they branded as many as could got the left side. And even today, when you're building corrals or something, sometimes if you gate, so they'll turn in that way, and they seem to turn in better, on the left side than they do the right-hand side turn. This is our home ranch. It's the same place you saw that picture of earlier. Our house is right where the old house was there.
Talk into the mic.
My dad, this is 1902, my dad was a baby in that buggy. The guy on the horse right there is, those of you who have been out at the ranch, is right where the barn is. They'd been here 9 years, so obviously they got something done. They got a pretty good stack of hay. Horses were, that's where the market was raising horses. There weren't that many people. There were more cattle out here than could be consumed by the small population. But horses were needed by everybody. So that herd, my grandfather grew that herd up to a point of close to 1,300 to 1,500 head. Everybody needed horses of some type. If you got a homestead, you were required to break, I think it was 40 acres a year. This is probably the worst thing that could have happened in Western Canada, was breaking that land. When Palliser came through here in 1859, he said that from Calgary to the border and right over to in the corner of Montana was not fit for habitation. And some of you guys that have tried to make a living here the last few years might have agreed with that. The only way of transportation, and too, was with horses. That's the only way you get around. I never look at a picture like that I don't think of something Bert Hargrave used to tell years ago. His folks, I guess they're right near the Saskatchewan border, so it's probably 35 miles down to Hargrave Ranch. Bert's mother and dad would drive all the way into Medicine Hat to vote in every election. They would turn around and they would drive all the way home. He voted Liberal and she voted Conservative. And I guess the horse got a lot of exercise. This is where there was a lot of demand for horses, the U.S. cavalry. I can recall my dad showing me some bills of lading and stuff that his grandfather had orders for horses for the cavalry. That, before I mention that, my grandfather leased a township of land out where the British block is now, near a little post office called Bigville. That township is 36 square miles. And he would run the horses through in the spring of the year, about this time or a little later. And he didn't do that till 1908 or later. When we recall, that's when the Finley Bridge was built. And about this time of year, if you could step right outside the building, you could see those herds of 13, 14, 1,500 head of horses being trailed right down the Esplanade, around the corner, across the bridge. The front end would be up by the golf course. They tried to keep them moving as slow as they could, because if they trotted on that bridge, the timbers would start to bounce up and down, and it would kind of panic the horses. My dad had all kinds of stories about things that happened there. He was just a kid at the time, and they were moving them. He said one time they were hard to get the first one started. He said they just got them started, and they looked across to the other side of the bridge. There was a gentleman, a Chinese market gardener, with a bicycle loaded with vegetables, started the other way. They tried to wave him off, and he must have been one stubborn gentleman. He kept coming, and my dad, who was riding right at the back, said by the time he got there, there were bicycle parts and vegetables and manure all over the place. And a very irate gentleman hanging over the side of the bridge shouting something. My dad said, I couldn't understand him, but it wasn't good. We weren't the, I'll mention it later, the cavalry, those orders that used to come in from the remount buyers, they wanted to buy, obviously, horses for the army, but they wanted them not less than 14 hands. Geldings were preferred, and no odd colors. They wanted bay, black, or sorrel, no buckskins or paints, I guess, so they would fit in the different cavalry units. They used a lot of horses, and it's 100 years ago, in the next, 3 months, that World War I broke out. Everybody was using horses, both sides. Some of you in this crowd will know Alistair MacArthur, his father and his father's brother worked for Hargraves. They came over from Scotland. And like a lot of other young men, they joined up. I think it was said that Medicine Hat was only about 8,000, about 800 soldiers joined up from here. Alistair's Uncle Sandy was a teamster, and he was using wagons there. His job was to haul ammunition to the front lines. He had a team shout out, I think Alistair said twice. They were at Vimy Ridge in some of those battles you hear about. I don't know how accurate the movie War Horse was, but they said it was fairly accurate that there was 1,200,000 horses killed in the First War. I guess if you killed the horses, it would stop some of the ammunition from getting to the front lines. This picture didn't really belong in here, but a good friend of mine was Mac Murray, and this is quite a well-known picture. And we got talking about horses going over the Finley Bridge. And Mac said that on 2 occasions, the river went out before they were able to get their horses. They had land on both sides of the river. They had to bring that whole herd of cattle in here, and they crossed those cattle. They came down the street here, crossed those cattle on Finley Bridge. I don't know whether at that time, but if you look here, those are sheep. Back to there, they put a herd of sheep. So that's what they did, and most years, I guess, they were able to cross the river without too much difficulty. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, Sundance, the name we picked for our buffalo operation, the Sundance was a rite of manhood that young Indian men took to, I guess, prove their strength and virility and their ability to become men in the tribe. They put leather thongs through incisions in their chest, put the leather through there and hung a skull like this on it, and had to do a dance swinging that skull around. This was always in the heat of the day until it pulled out of those incisions they'd made. It supposedly, the closest area here to the Sundance was at the west end of the Cypress Hills in the Medicine Lodge Valley. So we thought that was maybe kind of an appropriate name for the buffalo operation that we planned on starting. And we started, it's kind of odd how we got into it. I've been away for 10 years pretty much, and the boys had to take over the ranch. And when I came back, I thought, oh, I don't think I can handle a Viner Center, or I'm not good at drinking a lot of whiskey, and then coffee at the co-op didn't turn me on. So I was looking for something to do, and I said before to Donnelly, I said, you know, someday before I check out, I wouldn't mind seeing a few buffalo just on the hills above the kraals there. I think it was another of those eye rollers, you know, that she gets once in a while when I come up with a dumb idea. I think she had one time, and I said, what do you think if I go to Ottawa for a while? Our family seems to get into those. At the same time, somebody said to my grandson, Caleb, why don't you try out for that idol thing? It won't change your life. Well, we've done a number of those things. Anyway, we started, and I looked all over, and buffalo were like cattle, dogs, horses, women, anything else. There's different qualities of them. And I thought I had a pretty good eye for them, so I looked all over, and there was some god-awful buffalo around them, mostly in the States. There wasn't a lot up here. And after quite a while, we came onto a herd of animals in North Dakota run by an old veterinarian. He's been keeping records and breeding them up for over 20 years. They looked pretty good, and I made an offer on some of his heifers. So when we got home, we were home a few days, and he called up and he said, you know, if you'll take all of my heifers, I'll give you a little better price on them. So we kicked that around, and we did that. We'd be damned if we didn't do it again the next year, so now we got a whole herd of buffalo at home. And it required a fair bit of work. That's what you need to, not to start, you should start with a young calf. I firmly believe the animals, when you raise them, should be either brought in as calves or born on the place. If you bring older ones in, they're just pining to get back to wherever they're from, and you tend to have trouble with them wanting to move. The bulls get regular size. They can get up to, I think the largest one we had was 2,700 pounds. He was 7 feet tall at the hump. Most of them are well over a ton. Cows are probably 1,200, 1,300 pounds. In the wintertime, they don't require much if you have good grass. If they've got sufficient grass, they can get by. We do put feed out. This was, whether you remember, maybe 10 years ago, there was quite a bit of snow, and we got a Chinook that flew. The reason we're feeding them here is we had a lot of fences drifted over, and we're afraid the buffalo would walk over those fences. So every 3 or 4 days, we just take a bit of hay and some pellets out just to keep them hanging around. Those big heads of theirs just are like a bulldozer. They'll go through the snow and never growing there, and they do pretty well. Their metabolism slows down in the wintertime. These little gals here, Riney and Ken, you probably see this some years where there's a tough winter. They get a crust on the snow, and those antelope can't get through it. Their legs get cut up pretty badly trying to move through that snow, and I have some years have found a lot of dead antelope just from that. What we noticed here was that the antelope would follow the buffalo because the buffalo would break open those hard banks of snow. And I guess that's probably what they did years ago. Now, another thing here, these are the buffalo bulls in the wintertime. Buffalo, like a lot of wild game, go into a rut. You know, you don't turn the bulls out. We tried that, didn't make any difference. The buffalo breed usually about late July, August, and into September. And regardless of whether you put the bulls in the crowd all winter or not. And as soon as the breeding season's over, they take off, and they end up kind of in bachelor groups like that. Quite often, single bulls will go off by themselves and stay alone. I think it's not uncommon. They come back for food and sex. There's probably rings a bell with some of you ladies here tonight. You've heard of buffalo wallows, and these are every time they go by, they'll stop and rub in it. Say you hit one of those with a four-wheel drive and you're looking out the other direction, it'll charge you pretty good. This gives you some indication of the buffalo grow a kind of a, it's almost like a down feel under their hair. They have 30 to 40 hair follicles on their body for every one a beef cow would have. But they grow this matting underneath, and I don't think the cold bothers them at all. I've seen them out 40 below weather and they'll lay down right out in the middle of the prairie. Snow does not melt on their back. You've seen horses or cattle, their body temperature will, certain types of weather will melt and freeze the snow to their back. Buffalo, it never does. It just, the snow just lays there. They shake it off, but it never penetrates. So they all have that in the spring. It's just starting now. And it takes a while, and they look kind of unglamorous when they have that on them. There are places in the States that will buy that product. They were paying about $16 an ounce, and there are mills down there that will spin it, and they will do things like that with it. Looks a lot better on her than the buffalo, I thought. They usually leave it the natural color. I think it'd be extremely warm and very expensive. I think you'll see those in Denver at the stock show. There's high fashion places in New York and around that will feature buffalo sweaters and skirts and things. So it's, I don't know how widely spread it is, but it's very expensive. I think that cape was around $5,000. In the springtime, the ladies have their young. They'll usually separate from the herd for a while. They'll walk off quite a distance, have the young one, and those little guys are quite small. I don't think they weigh much over 50 pounds. They'll stay away till they're well bonded and nursed. I have bumped into them unintentionally the odd time. And those little calves can get up and run just as fast as a mother. It's amazing, even just a few minutes old. Where they are when they're born, they stay that way till September, October, and they start changing and they become that dark color that the mother is. They hang pretty close to their moms for it's funny, when they come back, the ones with calves tend to stick together. And the ones that haven't calved, because they haven't got any calves fall, they're going to tend to keep, buffalo move a lot. They're not like cattle. Cattle will spread out. Buffalo will move mainly as a herd, but they'll travel a long way. You can see them at evening and go up the next morning, they'll be 5 miles away. Older cow and calf, she is saying, you were too close, get the hell out of the way. And you see their tail up like that, their head down. All animals have a flight zone, and buffaloes are fairly close, and if they've got a calf, that's probably the most dangerous time, is when the cows are having their calves, or breeding season, when the bulls are around, and the bulls aren't interested in only in one thing, and sometimes they get fighting, and it's best just to stay out of the way. You hope it's not near a fence or something, because they'll go right through a fence. We've had them break through a fence near the highway a couple times. things out, it can be quite a wreck. So the graze in the summer, spring, they nurse a lot. I don't think the cows have much milk, but it's very nutritious. It has to be, because those little guys get from 50 pounds and we'll wean them in the fall, and they're close to probably 450 to 550 pounds when we wean the calves. They start bunching up like that. This one, I looked at that, I said, it looks like a conservative caucus. Their head in a bucket and they don't know which way their ass is going. Anyway, they are a lot of fun to watch when they're little. They're just like little kids that race around and have a good time. When you have them, one thing's required, you can't use ordinary cattle fences. You can't use a 4-wire fence, they'll just hop right over it, which is fine if just one would hop over. But when 200 or 300 hop over, you got about a half-mile fence all branched out. So we had to figure out some way to change the fencing. If they can't get their head over the top wire, they don't usually try and jump it. So what we did, and fence posts are too expensive. Those posts you see there are grater blades, and the blades that are on those maintainers that you see going down the gravel roads. They're 8 feet long. Those holes are bolted onto the maintainer blade. As it wears down, they take them off. So most of the municipal districts and counties around have a lot of maintainers, and they would take these blades off. So we would start buying them, and at first they were pretty reasonable, $2 or $3. The biggest mistake we made was using them on the Trans-Canada Highway, and other people saw them, and then they started taking the auction sales, and they'd run them up to $6 or $7 a piece. So the top wire is about 60 inches, and that seems to be the place. There's nothing to say that that fence would hold them if they were to stampede or two bulls were fighting, but they won't try and jump it usually. It's a lot of work. You guys would know that it takes 320 posts to build a mile of fence. We used over 10,000. We built about 35 miles of fence with those. They had to be welded on the corners and pounded in with a post under it. Imagine what Lee said to Rick one day. He said, "Jesus, if we ever get this done," he said, "I'll be deaf and you'll be blind." Steel, they work pretty good once they're in there. And but we've got a lot of hills where they had to be put in by hand. When you get the buffalo, there's always somebody in Ottawa dreams up something that should be done. They've got to be handled. They wanted them blood tested and tested for tuberculosis, and we did that in the first 10 or 12 years. So we figured there's got to be a better way on this than doing it. We started this Lee welding. We used drill stem and sucker rod, byproduct of the oil patch, to make drills. There's a lot of things you learn. You can't weld those together. The expansion on 300 or 400 feet of rod like that will break with the temperature expanding and contracting. So you have to make a kind of a clip saddle thing that goes over the rod and is welded on there. So the weld is actually just hanging in there. This is what we ended up building. It's as feedlots go, it's not very big, but it's a handling system and a place where we would hold the buffalo. Those are all kind of pie-shaped pens. They come into a circle you can see in the middle, every pin opens up into that, and we have to get them from this circle. Oh, there's another picture on the back of it. Get them there, bring them down here into this handling system. There's a hydraulic sheet between, and there's a set of gates in front, and you can open those gates and sort them about 5 different ways. These green bins, or blue bins rather, are holding screening pellets. They can't eat a high protein ration like corn or barley. So we buy those hold 20 ton each, so those big B trains you see going down the highway, we can put, it'll fill 2 of those things. And then the price of even screenings went from about $3,000 a load to $10,000 last year. They have free choice hay in front of them all the time. So that's what they eat to finish on. Another view of the holding area. The closer we get to the handling system, the stronger you have to make the krills, because they're starting to get pretty ratty by the time they get here. That's the alley that we take them down, and normally you just get a switch or maybe a stock broad if it was cattle and just walk them down. Unfortunately, you can't do that with buffalo. Rigged up that. We made that. It's made out of drill stem and plywood. It's 8 feet high. And we get the buffalo into that round pen. He gets behind them with that thing in the alley. It's rubber belting on either side, and that's a school bus mirror, so you can see down in front for the guy driving the tractor. The reason we do it, you don't want to be standing back to these are just calves. When you get big ones, standing in the middle of the alley, they're not going to stop for you. Cowboy, then we get him into a handling system. These are steel boxes, 7 feet high. I think they're 5 by 8. And as we bring them in, we try to break them down. Most times, those ones we're just sorting here, cows and calves. This is a scale here, and this table is where you mark the weights down. This is a hydraulic squeeze that controls the squeeze, and all of the gates in front of it are right here. So we bring them down into this, and as I say, when we were selling a lot of breeding stock, we'd have to get a vet out and pregnancy test them. They semen test the bulls. And the government who required that we blood test them and test them for TB, which meant that you had to get a sample of blood, and you had to do this every year. And if one buffalo came into your place that hadn't been tested, the whole herd had to be redone. Somebody in Ottawa, I guess, dreams up these things, but we had trouble convincing them of when to do it. You can't do it when the cows are pregnant, and you can't do it with those little calves. So we said it's got to be late in the fall or winter when we're weaning, and there's a reason to bring them in. And they reluctantly agreed. The government vets don't like coming out in the cold weather very much. And they'd have to take a blood sample, and with TV you give them a shot under the tail, but you've got to hold them for 72 hours to read the results of the shot. And we usually just tell them in the corral because there's no way you're going to get them back in after they've been just handled. So that went on. We don't do that anymore, but we have to use the same ear tags as they do for cattle. You've seen their little, I think there's one on the table, little round button tag you put in that's got a computer chip in it. You've got to register that. You've got to have it in the animal before it leaves the place. You can't go to a sale or an auction market or a feed or a packing house without that in them. I don't know if it's going to work. They tell me there's 40,000 illegal immigrants in Canada and they can't find any of those buggers. So. On that computer chip, and Ken, you may have read it just the other day, they think that within the next year or two there'll be an app for your phone where you can walk in your pen of cattle and read the numbers on your phone. And whether anybody wants to do that, I don't know. The Americans don't seem to worry about it. We've shipped cattle to Colorado quite a bit. And we usually phone to see if the trucks made it okay. And one time Rick phoned down, he said, "Those cattle get there?" And he said, "Yeah, we're just cutting the tags out of them right now." I don't know how much it does. I'm sure they figure they can find every old milk cow that they need or some kids 4-H calf out there. But anyway, it's mandatory that you do it now. Tags in there, throwing their head around. You got to watch you don't get your fingers between their horns and the chute. Usually we try to get them in when they're young, but there's always some that will lose one. Mothers. It doesn't take much to wean them. The cows don't hang around very long. And one thing about buffalo calves, they don't seem to get sick like beef cattle do. They don't get runny noses or pneumonia. We've never lost any, I don't think, from sickness. We've had some injured, some gored with horns once in a while, but so far they seem to be very, very healthy. As I said, free choice hay in front of them all the time, and those screening pellets. And We sell them for packing plants out of probably 18 to 22 months of age. Those would be your prime bulls, the young ones that would go to a packing plant. They, the last ones we shipped, when they sent the check back, they said, if you're wondering where your animals are going, they're going to Paris, Brussels, and Dubai.
Wow.
People over there seem to be more into health foods, and these are meat on these animals is pretty healthy. When we're delivering bred animals to other buyers, sometimes we buy the calves back from them because we know the bloodlines, and but we usually deliver them, and we've hauled them all over Saskatchewan into northern Alberta. We're not doing that much of it. To be honest with you, the buffalo is not our main business. It's I guess it's kind of a sideline, and I got a hunch that when I become extinct, they may become endangered. I don't know. These cattle hunters, triaxles, you can haul 64,000 pounds of animal in there. Ken, you know more about this than I do, but with buffalo we can get probably those slaughter bulls close to 50 in there. And the one thing that's different, they're hard to load. We often have to do it at night because the packing plant wants to start killing in the morning sometimes. And depending where the plant is, Lacombe is a 5-hour drive away, and we used to haul them into North Dakota, a place called New Rockford. It was a 600-mile haul. But what you have to be careful about is the compartments. There's half a dozen or so. I guess you can change the configuration a bit in those compartments. You have to make sure that the animals in the compartment have come from the same pen. They've got a real pecking order, and they'll shrink another 4%. They usually shrink about 5-6% on the haul. If you put 2 or 3 from another pen in, they just don't settle down. And the same in a corral. If you put a new animal in a corral, if anybody wants to grab something, I'm just about at the end of it here. If you get tired, put your hand up and I'll leave, or you can leave. Or something. So that's how they're hauled. I don't know whether I want to show this. This is a little orphan calf. Years ago, we found it somewhere. What happened to it? Whether it was a twin, it would have been coyote feed by the next morning. So I brought it home, and of course the kids were all home, and they were all a cute little calf, and we look after it, Grandpa. So we put it in the pen, and I think we tried milk replacer. It didn't work very well, and then we got lamb replacer, and it was drinking that. And of course the novelty with kids wears off in about 3 days. And the lady sitting down in front of me here inherited that calf. She fed it all summer until it got. He wouldn't grow like he would out on his mother, but big enough that you couldn't get in the pen with him. And he wanted that bottle, and they would push you all over the place. The kids, we just later on put him in with the other buffalo, and he didn't realize he was a buffalo. We got there, and he looked at them for a long time. Kids asked us what happened to Buffy one day, and he said, I guess he went to a better place. I didn't tell him that Buffy had joined us on many occasions for dinner, but one of those that don't try this at home. I had one of the first calves I got, and she'd always come up and I'd pat her a bit and give her a handful of pellets. When I was out in the field or in the truck, she'd always come up to me and worked all right, but I used to take people out. One time I had a couple from Manitoba, and we're driving around, and I had the windows down, and I was kind of looking out, and I heard this lady scream, and this buffalo stuck her head right in the window on the passenger side. So, this is obviously some of those old bulls. When they get old, you have to get rid of them. They get ornery, you can't move them, or chase anything you get near them with. So if you can find a rich American who wants something to hang on his wall, this is the best way to do it. It's a lot of work. This guy was a colonel from the American Marines. He was training troops to go to the Gulf War. He'd get out of the truck when he came, and he just looked like Teddy Roosevelt. That's a Sharps rifle. And, you got to make it look like a hunt. It's just kind of like shooting a milk cow's calf if you do it. So Rick usually goes out and he has these guys curl up a coulee a mile or two and come over the hill and shoot it. And this guy had a whole different way of doing it. He studied the ancient lore and he shot it. If you take something, you leave something. He had a little pouch on his neck and he took something out of it and left there. Then the work starts. You gotta haul that sucker home, and they bring 2 skinners, a taxidermist. There's a whole raft of people come with them. Used to advertise in the magazine that's the same name as yours, called Smoke Signals. It's a buffalo magazine. Up with, and buffalo steaks are pretty hard to beat. I've eaten beef all my life, but the only problem is it's so little fat in buffalo. You've got to be careful cooking it. Look, you can see it's got almost a third of the fat that beef has. It's very low in calories. It's a bit lower in cholesterol than some of the other meats. Extremely high in iron. We've had the odd person who couldn't eat other types of red meat that would try and get buffalo. This is where some of it ends up. This is the Cypress Club's 100th anniversary. And, I had it done up for that. We've had other people get heads like that, and they've decorated them up. If you go to the Denver Stock Show, you'll see them bronzed, and they're presented to retired bankers. They look fairly, there's a local guy that did that. I did the logo of the Cypress Club on that one. Here, we're going to say goodbye to the buffalo campers as they're leaving. That is painting a friend of ours. You probably all know Gina Lacoste. She was out at the ranch one day with Don McLean, and they took some pictures. I thought that kind of symbolizes what we've tried to do is maybe give them the life that they didn't have for a lot of years. That's their natural way. They're eating native grass. They're eating the same grass as ancestors were. They actually have a pretty good life. So that's about it, and I'll leave you with our logo here. I hope you know a little more about buffalo, and I apologize if it took longer than you had. Thank you very much. You can far as the volume of feed, you could probably run 5 buffalo where you'd have 3 cows. But you'd be feeding those cows in the wintertime, so the buffalo are on that grass probably year-round. So if you're using the grass, they're probably using it all the time, or cows a lot of times are only using it for 5 to 6 months a year. But as far as consumption,
The other question I have for you, like most wild animals, do you ever come across or been on albino buffalo at all?
crossing
Has
with,
there been such a thing?
oh, an albino, you mean?
Yeah.
No, and you pray you never have one, because if you get a white buffalo, you got every Indian in the country wanting to worship at your ranch. It's very sacred. A guy in New York State had one time. He had more Indians around than Custer.
Bob, are your buffalo, are they woods or plains buffalo?
They're plains. Most of the buffalo in this area. There are, the Americans had the wood buffalo on the endangered species list up until a couple of years ago, and now I think they've taken them off. I personally think it's probably the same animal, but just a different environment and habitat that they lived in. They're a little taller, narrower. They're the fur line on the back, where you see on the plains buffalo comes back. Their hump is a little different. There are people that are crossing them, trying to get some hybrid vigor, but I don't know whether it makes any difference. Years ago, they used to try crossing them with cattle. I think they did out at many berries, George Ross and some of them. I think they're not unlike a mule. You get a lot of them are barren. The odd ones that you probably get, I don't know whether you make any improvements. I think you just get a humpback cow with a bad attitude when you cross them.
Any birthing problems with them?
Any which?
Birthing, you know, like how you have to pull calves sometimes. And
No, they have small calves. They say life is too short to help a buffalo calf. We tried it one time, started using a tranquilizer gun, and all it did was really tick her off. She was on the fight, and I think we just left her alone. It looked like it had a leg backwards, but usually the calves are pretty small, so they don't see that much. Buffalo don't usually calve until they're 3 years old. Cattle didn't used to either until people thought they'd get another calf by breeding them as yearlings. So, no, they rarely have trouble. It takes about the same, I think the gestation period is about the same as cattle. And they're an interesting animal. They've got a mind of their own. If you're going to brand your cattle, you pick a day and you get them moved to the field you think you're going to do it in and get them in that morning. With buffalo, you work on their schedule. You open a gate, and when they get around to coming through, you get them in another field, and then sometimes it'll take 3 or 4 runs to get them all in the corrals. And they don't look it. They can run 40 miles an hour, or they can outrun a pretty good horse. They don't like horses. I've talked to a few people in the United States who have used mules with them. For some reason, they get along better. The largest producer of buffalo in the world is Ted Turner, that owns CNN and the Atlanta Braves. The fellow we bought our herd from, Ted wanted to hire him. He was probably the most knowledgeable person around. And Dr. Thralson thought about it for a while, and he said, I think I'd rather just do my own little thing, and I wouldn't have to put up with Jane Fonda. So.
The early part of your presentation, you talked about 1,500 horses, 12 to 1,500 horses. When they were sold, were they broken or were they sold well?
Depends who they were selling to. Homesteaders usually wanted them, broken as a team. Guys guys that got saddle horses usually wanted to break their own. The cavalry didn't want, they preferred them not to be broken. They wanted them 2 to 5 years of age, and they wanted to break them the way they did, for they had a different way of using them in the military. And they bought both saddle horses and work horses for pulling those ammunition wagons. But they had a lot of, there's a field, I think, in the British bloc called the Renown Field, so they must have had other people bring horses in there and they would select what they wanted. Yes,
Do buffalo have a lead cow or whatever, a leader in the herd?
yeah, it's an odd situation. They have I call it a pecking order. We found out that they can keep track of about 65 other animals. If you get more than that, the pens just don't settle down. And when you put a new animal in, it's just a circus for about a week till they get that all straightened out. And when they're out in the field, you'll often see them, because we kept ear tags on them, you'd see mothers or daughters or sisters tend to stay in a group. And I guess years ago when they moved in those herds of thousands, those family groups would tend to stay together. And yeah, but it's odd, as I say, with those trucks, it's absolutely essential that when you put those, liners have got 2 big compartments and some smaller ones. And we did it one time going to North Dakota, and we had 4 or 5. We said, well, we might as well just put them in. The whole load was an easy cattle shrink for 6% on a trip. That was a 600-mile trip. Those animals shrunk 11% just because, I've had buffalo, we've hauled them, and sometimes they'll just lay right down. They're easier to haul than cattle. They're hard to get into the truck sometimes. You've got to find a trucker who is either dumb enough to go in and shut the gates behind them, or we rig up ropes to pull, because when they go in, I know one time we were loading the trailer, and the boys were bringing them up, and they said, when we get them in, Dad, you shut the gate. Well, there was a bunch went in, and before the back end was in, the front end were coming out. So I didn't, they said, you didn't get the gate shut in time. Well, I said, there was a lot still to come, so they graze totally different than cattle. They move a lot, but tend to stay together. And they don't drink. You'll see them maybe drink in the morning and move on. Cattle will usually go as far as they have to from a water hole to get grass. But the buffalo will, we're noticing a change in just in the prairie grass, the difference in the grazing of the 2 species. We tried, not intentionally, to mix them. We've had a couple times. One time we went out, took some bales out to our beef cows. We just put the bales out, and I looked over, and out here, they must have walked over a snowdrift. Here's the whole herd of buffalo coming. So we got cattle and buffalo just, oh God, how are we going to ever straighten this mess out? So we just went home. The next morning we came up, the cows were all waiting for feed, and the buffalo were about 5 miles away. So we didn't have to straighten it out.
Mr. Porter and family,